speaking with Gail Wagner, who is a professor in a very unusual field. Gail, I'm going to let you explain your specialty because it is so broad and all-encompassing.
Okay, Amanda, I'm a paleoethnobotanist. That means I'm an archaeologist with a specialty in botany, and I look at the relationships between plants and peoples in the past. Now, I also am an ethnobotanist, so I also study modern-day people and their relationships with plants.
Well, today we're going to focus on the past, and I've thought that
American Indians ate squash, corn, and beans, and I guess at some point they did, but
that was not what early people in our part of the world used as their diet.
That's correct. I think everybody learned about the three sisters, corn, beans, and squash. But archaeologists like me know that prior to that, for thousands of years, as far back as 2300 BC, they were depending upon other domesticated, cultivated crops, ones that they domesticated from native weeds around them. And we're standing next to several of them. Sunflower was domesticated by the Northern American Indians by 2800 BC. And along with it, they domesticated another oily seeded crop, a similar seed called sumpweed. And that's a great story because that's a story that was totally lost to history. Nobody knew that anybody ate sumpweed until archaeologists found the domesticated seed. Whoa. They also domesticated starchy seeds, and we're standing next to maygrass and chenopod. And these both have seeds that are starchy, and they were the main source of carbohydrates for thousands of years prior to maize. So when maize came in, it came from Mexico to the Southwest, to the eastern United States, as did beans, and as did squash, the squash that we currently eat. And when maize came in, it was added to this suite of native domesticates, and only gradually, not until AD 900, did it become a major article in the diet.
Gail, besides the evidence of these being parts of diets from the work you've done through the flotation devices and all that kind of stuff, I believe that we have other examples that reinforce that have been found in some drier places or winter
Yes,
shells.
Fortunately, dry rock shelters and dry caves preserve these, and we've seen how they've been stored.
Oh.
And so maygrass, evidently the stalks pull up, and you can take the stalks and tie them into a bundle, and they've found like that in rock shelters.
And this we have lost in South Carolina or in North America. We've lost the domesticated variety of this, I believe.
Yes, several of these ancient domesticates are now extinct as domesticates. So the North American chenopod domesticate is extinct. All we have left is the weed.
But tell me what's happening in South America.
Well, in South America, they also domesticated it, also in Mexico, and that still continues. And today you can go to the health food store and buy quinoa. And that is the seed of this. And this would have had similar looking seeds back then.
That's just amazing.
Yes.
And not even the health food store, everywhere now.
Yes, you can now buy it everywhere.
And you know this because there was a group of American Indians here that built mounds. Why don't we know more about them? What happened to the Mississippians?
Well, when the Europeans came, and here in South Carolina, the earliest Europeans were the French along the coast. By 1520, the Spanish, and then later the British. And one of the first things they noticed, well, the Spanish saw mounds in use. So they were making earthen flat-top mounds that had temples on top. They were sacred places. And what happened to those people? Well, all of those Europeans brought diseases that they had no way to survive. Plus, the British were selling them as slaves to work the tobacco fields up in Jamestown.
So our Mississippians who were responsible for building the mound that you're studying near Wateree, they dispersed. And so I guess the Catawba and Cherokees are some of those dispersed
We
people.
believe that they became the Catawba, the Cherokee, the Muskogee. So a number of groups
But
descended from these Mississippian.
But as you said, these were cultivated. These people had settlements and towns, and they grew crops.
They were farmers. They were farmers. And they also collected wild game or hunted wild game and fished and collected wild fruit and nuts. So they had probably a more varied diet than we do today.
We know some of this because you and other archaeologists have received a grant to go and study and collect soil from around these areas, around these mounds, and by an incredible process, explain this flotation and how, when it's all over, you under your microscope are finding some of this remarkable material.
Yes, so what kind of material does a paleoethnobotanist look at? Some look at pollen. Some look at phytoliths, which are little silica skeletons left by plants. I look at seeds and nuts and wood. And they're preserved only when they've been charred at most open sites. There are a few, they could be preserved in a dry rock shelf. And I take a bag of dirt from an archaeological context, like a pit or a hearth, and I put it through a process called flotation. And in that I have a large container, a 50-gallon drum full of water, an insert with a very fine mesh screen, half the size of window screen on the bottom. And then it's got a sleeve, and you dump in your dirt. The dirt goes through the screen in the bottom, collects in the bottom of the barrel. Heavy things like hickory nutshells, pieces of ceramic pottery, stones collect in the screen, and the light stuff like the seeds float out and get captured in a fine mesh cloth.
And then, amazingly, although it wouldn't look like a seed if you just put it in my hand, the charred seeds and the charred bits of wood and the charred bits of different things are identifiable. You said there's enough of little telltale signs that make them that you can pick them out.
Yes, so I do it based on comparative anatomy. So I have what's called a comparative collection, a modern day collection of seeds, roots, nuts, wood, and I burn it. And then I look, so some things expand, some things pop, like popcorn, and some things shrink. And so then I'm able to look at the size, the shape, the seed coat pattern, and I can tell you what it was.
One of them had a jigsaw-like pattern.
Yes, the tobacco, one of my favorite seeds. It looks like a jigsaw puzzle pattern on the seed coat.
But this flotation, I think y'all collected how many bags?
This year, or in 2020, we collected 131 bags of dirt.
Whoa.
Now, one of my sites that I worked at, we collected 3,500 bags.
And I think you've had some good partners on this. Just quickly tell me who was working with you.
Yes, well, Chris Judge from the Native American Studies Center has been instrumental in us getting our 5-year grant from Duke Energy. And then my co-director is Adam King from the South Carolina Institute of Archaeology and Anthropology.
Besides foods to eat, they needed clothing, and it wasn't all deerskin. They needed bags, they needed baskets. What other plant fibers were essential, and how do you go from having a plant to having a piece of rope or a bag?
Well, making fibers would have been a daily, constant occupation from little girls age 4 on up. They would have been making fiber all the time. And you can get fiber from 3 parts of the plant: seeds, like cotton, which is not native to North America, but that's a seed hair. You can get it from the leaves, like yucca or rattlesnake master.
Yes. Or you can for sandals, they like that.
And yes, they found sandals in a dry cave in Kentucky made out of rattlesnake master fiber. Or from the stem, which is called bast fiber. And that, for example, milkweed, later in the summer will have a bast fiber, and today I can show you Indian hemp, which later in the summer when it hardens up also has a bast fiber.
And although trying to make fiber is difficult for me, with practice, these young, especially just all day long fiber, because you needed it for everything.
You need it for everything, net bags for tying a house together, for everything. They had no Walmart. You had to make everything yourself.
Isn't it remarkable that because of the Mississippians and their mounds and knowledge that people like you have, we know that their life was so rich and varied, and we really see that although we want to sometimes use the word primitive people, that it was not, that's really completely incorrect.
They were never primitive.
It was a remarkably organized and diverse and rich society, and I want to thank you for scratching the surface and giving us a peek into this fascinating topic.
You're very welcome.